Hey everyone, my name is Kathy Cronin from Broaken Roads, and I'm here today for Amy Howard at home to show you some techniques on this antique dresser. We're going to use Cracked Patina, one-step paint, and some waxes on here, maybe matte sealer. I'm not even sure, we might even throw in a little bit of mica powder, so we'll see how it goes. So let's get started. So we're going to do things a little bit differently today. I want you to be able to see this close up rather than just doing a whole piece from a little bit further away. Because we're using Cracked Patina, it definitely is something that you need to see the reaction of the paint on top of the patina once it's applied and dried. The first thing that we're doing is using Clean Slate to clean our piece. So when you use Clean Slate, you just basically put it onto a rag and then you clean off your piece. And then you want to keep turning your rag over and over just to make sure that you're getting all of the dirt, dust, wax, oils, anything that could prevent your products from sticking to your piece. You want to make sure that you thoroughly clean it off and then let it dry. You let it dry about 10 minutes. Once this is dry, then you can start with your next product. Now, remember, you do not have to rinse this off. That's the most awesome thing about Clean Slate. I love it for that fact alone. It's simple to use and it just goes on really, really easy. And once it's dry, it's ready to go for your next step. So we're going for this sort of a look today on this piece. Obviously what you can see here is there's a darker color underneath, it's Atelier. And then on top of that we added Cracked Patina, and then on top of that I added another one-step paint color in its gatherings. So the very first thing that we do after we use the Clean Slate is to put the base coat of paint on, and that will be this color here, Atelier, in the one-step paint. So I have this here, and I'm going to just use Amy's 1.5 inch chip brush, just a small brush here on the drawers, and take a little bit of paint. Now you actually want to make sure that you don't get this too heavy. It's just a thin coat that you need to apply. And this paint goes on very, very well. One-step paint dries in about 20 to 30 minutes, just depends on the humidity in your area. So you want to just take your time, get a thin coat on there, and make sure you get full coverage, 100% coverage. Then after this is completely dry, we'll add on the Cracked Patina to give it the opportunity to set for a couple of hours. And once it's set, then we'll apply the second coat of paint. Now Amy often talks about how Cracked Patina is used in the way of the way an Oreo cookie is put together. So it's one-step paint and then a layer of Cracked Patina and then another layer of one-step paint. So I've got this on here. Once this is dry, we'll get started with the next step. Next step, Cracked Patina and a chip brush. So we're going to take the Cracked Patina and then add a little bit of water to it into a container. I've mixed this together, just a small amount here. It is about 2 to 1, so I have 2 parts Cracked Patina to 1 part water, and I'm just stirring this together with Amy's 1.5 inch chip brush. Once this is stirred together, I'm going to apply it to this piece, and then I'm going to let this set for about 2 hours. You want it to actually get to the point where it will still look wet and glossy, but when you touch it, it's not sticky any longer. That's when we know we're ready to apply the next coat of paint. It is very, very thick coming out of the jar, out of the container. The more water you add, the least amount of cracks you're going to see in the end. I want this a little bit heavier cracking, so I haven't quite thinned it down a 1 to 1. I just wanted a 2 to 1. So 2 parts Cracked Patina and 1 part water. So then we're just going to apply it. It's almost like a glue, you know, just putting this across here and letting it dry. And then coming back and adding on the next layer of one-step paint. This is recommended to be done on a horizontal surface rather than vertical so that it doesn't drip. You can do it vertically, but it's pretty tricky. I just prefer to do this from a horizontal perspective if at all possible. All right, here we go. And a little bit of wait time, and we'll be on to the next step. The cracked patina has dried now. It's a very shiny finish. I can run my hand across it. So obviously it's dry. It's a very smooth, slick feel. And what I'm adding to it now is the next layer. The next layer is going to be Gatherings One Step Paint, and I'm using Amy's 2-inch chip brush. So I'm just going to fully saturate the brush like this and then apply it to the top of it and let it set. And then you'll notice it'll start to crack, and I'll get some close-ups of that as well. Now just keep in mind when you're using cracked patina, you only want to go over your part that you're covering once, maybe twice, quickly. If you start to go over it too fast, you're going to pull off the patina, the cracked patina underneath, and it'll start sticking to your brush. So I like to use a separate container when I'm doing this, when I'm doing the top layer, because I don't want this to go back, just in case I got any on the brush, I don't want it to go back into my can. So here we go. I'm going to just run a layer across here. Start at this corner and then run it down as fast as I can. And then leaving it alone as much as I can. I don't care if it's a little messy. That's all part of the process. I want to see this start to crack and pull and age with a lot of detail so that it looks a little bit like our sample that I showed you earlier. You can already see it coming up at the bottom left corner of the screen. It's cracking like it should. I'm going to leave that alone, let it dry. And then we may do a second light coat after this is dry, or I may go on to my glaze. There's just a little bit right in here. I'm going to see if I can trick this in quickly. Again, I don't care if it's just a little bit messy, because that was the goal anyway, to show age and some flaking and, you know, layers of paint over time. Very gently applying in little spaces. I want to get as much on there as I can. See right there? Exactly what I didn't want to do. I'll just pull it back up. It's a little globby in spots, but that's okay, because when this dries, after it completely dries, I'm going to do a light sanding over it, and then I'll decide whether or not I want to do one more layer of paint or if I want to go ahead and add on my glaze. And I'm thinking about just moving on with the glaze because it'll settle into these cracks in here and really pull that out, pull out that aging. So we'll let this set for just a little bit and then come back and decide whether or not we want to go on the glaze, but I'm leaning towards the glaze, so we'll see what happens. I decided after applying the first coat of Gatherings on top of the cracked patina that I was very happy with the finish. I like how this came out. So all I'm going to do at this point is do a light sanding with the 320 grit sandpaper just to remove any loose pieces that might be on here before I start applying the glaze. We've added our second layer of paint to this piece, and now we're getting ready to do the glaze. So I made a pretty simple glaze this time. All I'm using is Amy's gel stain with water, and I chose Windsor Gray to use all over this piece. I mixed the Windsor Gray with 50% water, so it's 1-to-1 water and gel stain. So it's a little bit runny, of course. And then I'm going to use Amy's 2-inch chip brush to apply all over the piece. And then after that, I'm going to pull it off with a towel. So it's just a clean, dry, lint-free cloth. Actually, it's one of my husband's old t-shirts, but that's what we're going to use to pull the glaze off afterwards. Then we're going to let that dry and go on to the next step. So here we go. Just taking a little bit of the glaze mixture here and running it into my brush. And I'm going to apply it to the piece, gently running it all over. So it's starting to fill into those cracks as well, giving it even more depth. I don't want this look to be a stripe, of course, like this, so that's why you use what we call a negative tool to remove the glaze in sort of a pouncing motion. So I'm going to do it sort of like this to pull it off. You know, you just swipe, you're going to get more stripes. So I like to use the pouncing motion on a piece like this where you have all of this chippy look. Gives it a very natural sort of finish that this has been painted over time and it's worn down and has a lot of character and depth to it. All right, great. So we're going to do this to each of the pieces on the dresser, and then after that we'll go on to the next step, which will be matte sealer and wax. I'm adding matte sealer with Amy's 2-inch chip brush just to seal this entire piece before I add on the waxes. It's going to take about 30 minutes to dry, and then we'll move on to the waxing. Just to apply a thin coat, saturating the brush, and then I'm running it carefully over the piece just to seal this all up. This dries with a very matte finish, no shine at all. My matte sealer is dry now, and we're ready to go on with the My Neuron Beeswax. I'm using one of my very well-loved older Amy Howard 2.5-inch chip brushes. Thick bristles, great brush, and I'm going to put some of the My Neuron Beeswax on a piece of cardboard. Just be sure that when you start to use your My Neuron Beeswax, you shake it up really, really well, because it has a tendency to have some fluid at the top that will settle up there, and you want to make sure that gets all mixed in. So then you're going to add a little bit of My Neuron Beeswax to a piece of cardboard, and then take your brush and run it to the wax. When you do that, you want to offload your brush just a little bit so that you don't have a huge amount on there. I know a little bit goes a long way, and this does obviously take about 20 to 30 minutes to dry before we're going to add the dark wax to it. But we're going to spread this all over the piece, and when we're finished with that, after 20 to 30 minutes, we'll add the dark wax to accent and warm this up. It has a very cool finish right now. The top is a warm brown, so I want to be able to blend the two together and tie in the hardware. And to do that, I'm going to need the dark wax on top of the Mind Your Own Beeswax. We'll get this thing covered and move on to the next step. All right, we've waited about 20 minutes and we're going to go ahead and add our dark wax to the piece. The best part about this is you get to pull it out of a puck, and I'm just going to use a piece of cardboard, and we call this offloading. So you want to run your brush, I'm using Amy's 2-inch brush, into my dark wax, just getting a really good ample amount on there. And then I'm going to offload this brush onto a piece of cardboard. I don't want to put it directly on the piece because I want to start out subtle and light over this Mind Your Own Beeswax that's set, and then just add a little bit more as I go along, kind of stand back and look at it again and just see where I'm at. So you can add more and more depth to it by adding more wax, but I don't want to do it all real heavy at one time. So I've offloaded my brush now. I'm just going to lightly run this across the piece. You can already tell it's getting a little bit of warmth to it. What that's going to do is tie into my top up here. You can see my top is this darker brown color. So we're just going to do this all over. I don't want an incredibly heavy amount on the main areas, but I will lightly run my brush over those areas in totality when it's done. For now, just a little bit here and there, not in a straight line, no heavy pressure. I'm just kind of running my brush over it to sort of warm it up, tone it up a little bit. And then also I think on my little keyholes right here that have been sort of chippy finished out, I'm going to make those a little bit darker so that they stand out from the piece itself just a tad bit more. When this gets finished out and we get a larger picture of it, you'll notice the difference here. It's a little bit hard to tell close up, but I wanted you to kind of see the difference between a non-waxed area and a waxed area. It's already starting to warm up a little bit. I'm just going to keep going around this piece. And then when it's finished out, we're going to wait about 20 minutes and buff the entire piece to give it a nice sheen, and then add the hardware back onto it, and then finish out with some final pictures.